Hello. Please note that this presentation is for equipment-only recipients. If you are the recipient of an infrastructure grant, please refer to that recording instead. Hello, and welcome to the California Department of Food and Agriculture, or CDFA's Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure, or RFSI, webinar for recipients. Today's presentation will cover what you need to know to start your grant successfully. Some topics will be covered in greater detail later, either in another training or from your assigned grant analyst's communications, so as to not make today's meeting overly long.
This first slide covers general information for grant recipients. The RFSI recipient website, shown on this slide, has the most comprehensive and up-to-date information for grant recipients, including the Grant Management Procedures Manual, a list of allowable and unallowable costs and activities, information on prior approval, and other important material. As a reminder, you are required to follow all applicable federal and state regulations. More details can be found on page 3 of the Grant Management Procedures Manual. The equipment purchased must be similar to, but not identical to, the originally purchased equipment. If you requested a refrigerated van, you must purchase a refrigerated van. You may change the manufacturer of the vehicle, purchasing from Ford versus Mercedes-Benz, but you cannot switch to a different type of vehicle. As always, when you have questions, check with your grant analyst. Finally, your grant analyst is your best resource, but please be patient and remember CDFA is processing 120 other grants at the same time. We will respond to you as soon as possible. You can expect a response from your grant analyst within 2 business days. However, we cannot control when your grant agreement will begin processing.
Grant agreement execution will be handled by CDFA's Grant Awards Unit, or GAU. This includes the creation and execution of the grant agreements. You will receive an email from Lauren Bollinger, a GAU analyst. Be sure to check your emails frequently and ensure you are being responsive to any and all emails. The signed grant agreement is your contract with CDFA. Please read it thoroughly prior to signing. If you have any questions, reach out to your RFSI grant analyst immediately to discuss. Delaying the signature will in turn delay the execution of your grant agreement and delay any advances and/or reimbursements. The grant agreement is not considered executed until a GAU manager signs and executes it. You will receive a second email from Lauren B. with your executed grant agreement that contains all the required signatures. A reimbursement or an advance will not be processed until your grant agreement is executed and submitted to the Financial Services Office for processing. The process time between grant agreement execution and payments can take up to 45 business days.
As was just mentioned, you are expected to follow your approved scope of work and budget, which are included in your grant agreement. What happens if you need to make a change? In many cases, this is allowable. However, some changes require prior approval from CDFA and in some cases from USDA. This information is in the Grant Management Procedures Manual you will receive at the time of signing your grant agreement. To make things simpler, CDFA has also created a When is Prior Approval Required document linked on the Recipient Resources website at www.cdfa.ca.gov/RFSI/recipients. If you are uncertain whether a change is allowable or requires prior approval, as always, please check with your grant analyst before making any changes. Remember that unapproved changes or items not included in your scope of work are not eligible for reimbursement.
An important part of receiving grant funds is record retention. This is where you keep and submit project-related records. For your RFSI project, you will have to retain all financial records, project records, and supporting documents until January 31st, 2030, or until any litigation related to the grant is resolved, whichever date is later. All records must be made available to OGA or its designees upon request. Records that must be retained include actual expenditure invoices of direct costs charged to grant funds as well as matching funds, and all other supporting documentation related to the grant agreement. Examples of some project-related records to retain are receipts of equipment purchases, purchase orders, invoices, and any other documents related to spending grant funds. In short, keep everything, all records, all documentation. You must retain and submit receipts from every purchase. Remember, no receipt, no money. You cannot be paid or reimbursed if you do not have the required documentation. In order to be paid, you will have to submit all receipts with invoices to your grant analyst. Receipts should be itemized and sufficiently detailed, including those from contractors if applicable. Please be sure all receipts and documents are legible. Err on the side of caution and keep all grant-related records. Keep the physical documents together in a safe place. We recommend scanning the records into an electronic version as you receive them and keeping the electronic records in a computer folder easily accessible to you. For further details regarding record retention, please refer to the Equipment-Only Grant Management Procedures Manual on the Recipient Resources website.
All equipment purchased with grant funds must be adequately trackable and uniquely identifiable. This can be the VIN or serial number that is on a vehicle or equipment. If one is not present, it must be permanently modified via attaching a plaque to, engraving the equipment, or similar, to have a unique identification number. We recommend using your agreement number. Note that equipment 1 is not sufficiently unique. It is not necessary to do this for small accessories to your equipment. The equipment inventory record form must also be completed when equipment is purchased. Your grant analyst will share this with you, or it is available on the recipient's website. Equipment disposition. CDFA will have an additional training that is closer to project closeout, where we will discuss what happens to equipment after the grant performance period. Additional details will be forthcoming. Your grant analyst will be able to answer any questions you may have.
Advance payments are available for up to 90% of the grant-funded total. The remaining 10% will be withheld for closing costs and will be released at the end of the grant term. To request an advance payment, reach out to your assigned RFSI grant analyst and request an advance payment request form. To qualify for an advance, you must provide a justification for the immediate needs of funds requested. These advance payment funds must be spent within 90 days. Capital gains cannot be accrued with these funds. Any capital gains that are accrued must be returned to CDFA. The recipient is still required to submit an invoice and any receipts after purchases are made. Please reach out to your assigned RFSI grant analyst if you have any questions.
This slide will cover invoicing. There are two types of payment methods for allowable costs incurred. Advance payments, which were covered in the prior slide, and reimbursement payments. For reimbursement payments, you must submit an invoice for reimbursement no later than 30 days after costs were incurred. Your grant analyst will send you the invoice with detailed instructions, and you will then fill it out and send it back. Please remember to include all supporting documentation, such as receipts, etc. The final 10% of an award is withheld from reimbursement and advance payments until the conditions of closeout are met. Closeout procedures will be covered at a later date. This slide shows a sample invoice. For equipment-only grants, the one category in the budget is equipment. All other budget categories will reflect $0. Your grant analyst will fill out certain fields on the form and instruct you how to fill out your part of the form. Once you fill out the invoice, you will send it back with supporting documentation such as receipts, etc.
Your scope of work, or SOW, is part of your grant agreement, which is your legal contract with CDFA. It must be followed exactly. Should changes occur during your project, you will be required to complete a scope of work revision. If you anticipate needing a scope of work revision, please reach out to your assigned grant analyst as soon as possible. They will provide you with the necessary steps and/or forms to complete your scope of work revision. As mentioned, some changes will require CDFA and/or USDA approval. Please keep your grant analyst up to date on all project changes. They will make sure you remain in compliance. Remember, if a cost is not included in your scope of work, you will not be reimbursed for those costs. We do not anticipate many scope of work revisions will be necessary for equipment-only grants. Changes that can be made include updating mailing addresses, contact person, contact information, etc. Minor changes to equipment. Note that scope of work revisions are not necessary if you are just switching brands from what is included in your scope of work. Minor changes to project activities, such as changes to timelines or partner organizations, and small decreases to total grant-funded costs. You don't have to worry about spending every single cent, though you are welcome to. Changes that cannot be made include changes to project location. This is where the activities are taking place. Changes to recipient organization. Changes to the performance measures. If you cannot meet your performance measures, this just must be explained in your final report. Major changes to costs or activities. Remember that you have been approved for the project described in your scope of work, or increases to total grant-funded costs.
Financial review. There are 3 types of financial reviews that recipients can expect. The type of review will be selected by the CDFA Audit Office. This information is not yet available. CDFA will reach out with more information when the time is appropriate. You can learn more about how to prepare for a successful audit. The document is available on the recipient resource page, or you can request it from your grant analyst. Reports. For equipment-only recipients, only a final report is required by USDA. Templates will be provided by USDA and shared by CDFA as soon as possible. The report will ask you to outline progress towards your performance measures. We encourage you to develop tracking mechanisms to keep tabs on your progress in these areas if you have not already done so. Details will be provided at a future training. Site visits. Some recipients may be selected for site visits. This may be virtual or in person. Your grant analyst will coordinate this with you. This has not yet been determined, so details will be forthcoming. Project closeout. For equipment-only recipients, the grant duration ends on December 31st, 2025. Details for project closeout will be provided in a future training closer to the end of the performance period.
Here are some of the resources that were discussed in this presentation. The CDFA RFSI recipients website will contain all of the forms and informational sheets you may need, including the Grant Management Procedures Manual. Remember to refer to your approved scope of work and/or grant agreement when needed. And finally, your assigned grant analyst is here to help. Reach out as soon as you know you have a question or doubt in order to avoid any issues. That concludes the presentation for equipment-only recipients. Thank you.